Welcome to Top Shot. We are going to talk to Dr. Kasturirangan, the man who watches moon from here like you and me, but doesn't just stop at watching it. Plans it, thinks about it, and actually sends a mission to moon. And that's the man we are going to talk to today. Dr. Kasturirangan, welcome to this program. In fact, for a long time, right from a child to the old people, all the time we have this fascination for moon. I don't know why. Maybe it depends upon your zodiac sign, I don't know. Very few people would plan to actually go there. Some other countries had gone, but we always thought it was a monopoly of these big countries.
True.
How did this happen? How did you, as an organization like ISRO, started planning about sending a mission to moon?
I think you have started off with a rather profound question on the moon. I mean, it has fascinated generations of not only youngsters. For every age, there has been something unique and mysterious about moon. And but the space era has brought in a new dimension to lunar exploration. You know, the idea of moon being an object there, a very beautiful object, and I should recall when this question was asked to Vajpayee ji, I was sitting in after a launch of a PSLV, and we were addressing the world media after the successful launch, and at that time we were discussing about a lunar mission, and the question was asked to Vajpayee ji, we understand that you are thinking of a mission to moon. He said, no, this is a highly technical question, may I ask Kasturirangan to say a few things. I said, actually Prime Minister is the most appropriate person at this juncture, because we know very little about the moon except the poet's imagination, and Vajpayee ji is a poet. So he is the one who can really answer this question. But anyhow, I would articulate a little bit about what we are thinking about the moon. I'm just telling you that's a kind of a fascination that people had. But so far as the space is concerned, it is one more effort to bring in the best of the technology to understand this very interesting object. So Americans did it with initially unmanned missions, and then they went with manned missions.
Neil
Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, they all stepped onto the moon. And then Russians did it, not only in the initial orbiting, but landing and then returning samples, robotic exploration. These were all part of the erstwhile Soviet Union's feats on the moon. Then of course Europe did a few exploration, Japanese did, and more recently the Chinese did, and now the latest to join the club is India.
So we are the sixth country or the fifth?
Yeah, fifth country, if you take this route. And so it's obviously a very exclusive club to which India has joined to reach the moon. But I think the story doesn't start here. It's a 45 years of brick by brick building up of a capability that made India undertake this ambitious moon.
This is a very interesting point. How did the organization really started working? But tell me, when this idea of sending a lunar mission started to begin with?
Actually, that's again a very interesting episode. You know, this was the first anniversary of the Pokhran 2.
Okay.
And there was a meeting in Delhi where Professor Murali Manohar Joshi wanted to organize for the Delhi Intelligentsia, Science and Technology Minister. He wanted to organize at the first anniversary of the Pokhran 2 a meeting where he asked me to address about the latest in the space program as observing the first anniversary. And he had invited a lot of policymakers, intelligentsia, professors.
99, year 99.
This is 99 May.
Okay. Yeah.
Intelligentsia, then press, and all kinds of people who understand issues at the national level. 400 of them had gathered, and also the members of the political spectrum, including ministers. And I, of course, made a very elaborate preparation and made sure that I convey the spirit of India's space efforts. But in the whole process, I also included a couple of nice slides about the present capability with PSLV and our capability of building satellites, our ability to go to moon, our ability to go to Mars, our ability to go to Venus, and so on. I think even in the much more detailed description of the space, this caught the attention of the press. The next day, it was all over in the paper, India eyeing for moon. That became the news. And there has been a tremendous response to the whole thing. The response is incredible, not only from very senior people, intelligent people, the people with scientific bent of mind, but also from the new generation, the youngsters who felt so much inspired that India can eye for moon. They started asking, when are we going to do it? How can we participate in this mission? All these kinds of things. I thought there is a tremendous potential for creating a kind of a new wave in this country by this kind of flagship missions. So I went to the next logical step. I went to the academicians and had a long dialogue with them. I went to the engineering community professionals and had a long dialogue with them, and both of them gives me tremendous support because they said there is something worthwhile to undertake. Then I went into a national study with a team, very competent team at the national level with Dr. George Joseph, who was at that time the director of the Space Application Center, but he headed a national team, and they came out with a very feasible study on the moon. And then I also made a presentation on a limited basis of this to the evidence that I annually give to the Parliament Standing Committee, and I told them that besides doing all this, ISRO is also looking into it. But that again caught the attention of the parliamentarians, and from the extreme right to the extreme left, I should say, they all supported me, and they wrote a 4-page note in their proceedings saying how India should be more ambitious than only going to the moon. You can see the spirit of their support. And then, of course, I took Brajesh Mishra into confidence and told him what I had done.
Principal Secretary to the
Principal Prime Minister. And then I went to Vajpayee ji, and Vajpayee ji said, have you done all this homework? Have you got the clearance from the Space Commission? I said, next week I am going to place it to the Space Commission. And because that is the highest policy making body in the country, which directly reports to the Prime Minister, at that time Vajpayee ji. So I did all this and finally went to the Vajpayee ji that I have done my homework. And I think I have the support of the country. And Vajpayee ji said, August 15th is coming and we normally make announcement from the ramparts of Red Fort. Can I include this? I said, by all means, because we are very confident and we have the support of the country. Then he said that, yes, I will do that, and he announced it, that India will now make forays into planetary exploration era.
Was this 2000, year 2000
This
or 2001?
is 2003, August 15th.
Okay.
And he called it Chandrayaan. There is another interesting thing on this, Suresh. He called it Chandrayaan 1. It was, we had sent it as Somayana as the word. He changed two things. He first changed it into Chandrayaan because he thought it's the journey to moon, which is more important. So I think he knew Sanskrit, or he has really had a discussion on that. And second thing is he called it Chandrayaan 1. So next day when I went to see Vajpayee ji, I asked him, sir, you have added this name 1 also. He said, yes, how can you have only one mission and a one-shot operation? We need a long-term perspective. So it is Chandrayaan 1. So this is the way in which Vajpayee ji looked at it. And I think thus was born a major mission for this country in undertaking and entering into an era of planetary exploration.
But Doctor, I'm really, while talking to you, I'm now trying to understand the sequence of events. From 99, your first thought came in,
Yes.
to 2003,
That's
when the
right.
Prime Minister could announce it on the moon, I mean,
Right.
about the moon.
4 years. Yes.
Just 4 years.
That's right.
And then now, just about
Next
5
4
years from then,
Yes.
we have been actually sent it there. Tell me, is this, what explains this such a fantastic possibility, just thought to action?
That's
of
great.
Reality to vision. How this happened?
That's a very beautiful way of looking at it. First, I will say something which I felt elated. Vajpayee ji makes the announcement on August 15th, 2003. Manmohan ji makes an announcement in 2008, August 15th, that it is up there. You know, a period of 8 years, two prime ministers, one saying that India is going to enter into it, another prime minister says that it has entered. That is the 8-year story. But the central point which you asked, Suresh, regarding how this kind of a thing gets done, and how confident you become in trying to make this announcement and then realize it. I think there is a spirit of behind this, a culture behind it, which is ISRO. And I should say that when you try
ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization.
that is Indian Space Research Organization, that there is a culture in this organization, and there is a spirit of this organization which is very unique. When we tried to do this announcement, 4 years of homework, we did all the aspects of the study of how to reach moon, what kind of scientific value is there, what kind of technological challenge is there, what could it mean to an international community and India's own position in the International Committee of Nations, and then how it can inspire a new generation. All these went into the thought of formulating this strategy, working out the details, assessing the money that is needed and the type of resources that we need to put and a rough time frame in which it can be done. This was all analyzed to nitty-gritty details.
All in-house by
All
ISRO?
in-house by the ISRO team. The scientific input also came from the scientific community of the country.
That's a really an Indian
that
effort.
is like Tata Institute of Fundamental Research and many other institutions in the country contributed to the scientific objectives of this.
All Indians.
All Indians.
So this is
at
a
that time.
real Indian indigenous effort?
That's right, when it was formulated. But then we made a small provision in the spacecraft that we can also invite proposals from abroad and allow them to join this mission if they have small instruments which can make a lot of value to the overall mission. So we made an announcement of opportunity across the world. United States responded, Europe responded, and so we had several proposals coming from these places. And finally, 2 instruments from United States were chosen, one from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and another from the Johns Hopkins University. Then we had one from the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory. Then we had one from Bulgaria, 2 from ESA. So 6 instruments came from Europe and 5 instruments came from India. So ultimately, the conglomerate of 11 instruments that are flown on the Chandrayaan-1 is a mix of both international participation and an Indian participation. But the mission is Indian, conceived by India, executed by India, and therefore all that the success that we got, it owes to the Indians and the engineers and the scientists who are responsible for doing.
So you feel very proud that your baby is now fostered and become a running child?
Absolutely. I feel thrilled at the fact that you can do homework, you do the homework right, and you look at all the aspects, and you are then endowed with the success of this kind.
So, Doctor, you mentioning about ISRO as an organization which produced such a miracle and the movement of which all of us are so proud of, it was all created by ISRO. What's that culture in ISRO which really makes it happen? What is that really makes it click like this?
I think it's a very, very interesting question because there is something unique. I have also found, and I have also found it only by contrast, by looking at many other systems that work in this country and which has also to deliver goods in several ways, whether it is science and technology, whether it is in industry, whether it is in the world of other areas where you have to develop and deliver. We have different kinds of approaches for doing it. Now, what is uniqueness about ISRO? There is a question. First of all, as I said, that it was created by people who had a vision of India, Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. Then came, and the vision of India, he didn't visualize this program. This was within 3 to 4 years of launching the Sputnik on October 4, 1957. He started thinking about India's role and the India advantage that India can take from the vantage point of space and its implications on the development of the country within 4 years of the launching of Sputnik. And he had, of course, he had a culture which was very unique. He just didn't only discuss with India, they discussed with the individual. At the time of formulating a program and a project, you should get the best of the input across the world. It should not be time-trodden path. It has to be innovative, and it can be a trailblazer. So, if you want to do that, the topmost intelligentsia across the world has to participate in defining what you want to achieve. Achievement is your definition, but the route to achieve and the methods you adopt, I think the best intelligentsia, Sarabhai got that in. He had links with Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He got some of the best professors to discuss about the approaches of dealing with it. Experiments like satellite instructional television experiment, one of the largest sociological experiment ever conducted using a space system in 70s, came out of those discussions at MIT, which he translated here. Oh. This is the MIT Media Lab. They did that. And then the Landsat system for remote sensing. Again, Americans launched it, but he saw in it a very interesting input for timely, accurate and precise information about natural resources. Then he saw that we need to have communication systems which can provide communication connectivity with the remote part of India. You know, there was a time in 60s when a telegram used to reach after 2 weeks from Assam to Delhi. So that was the communication link that we had. We had no means of connecting with our downrange islands like Andaman, Nicobar or Lakshadweep. So he saw in a communication system a very unique way of connecting the country, and at the same time also provide important solutions to areas like education, health and so on. And then ultimately he also saw that if you hoist a satellite at that altitude of 30 to 36,000 kilometers, You can have a meteorological vision which can provide regional prediction, which is so important for the agriculture in this country. All these aspects he visualized.
So, Doctor, is it his vision which actually made ISRO?
Yes. Actually, when I stepped down in 2003 and Vajpayee told me, now you can get into Rajya Sabha, only one thing I looked back in retrospect. By and large, his vision has been fulfilled. The 40 years it took, but India reaped the benefit of a vision which has made an impact right down to the grassroots.
Doctor, that vision is one thing, but what is very unique about this is that he passed away, unfortunately, at a very young age. I mean, very untimely death.
52
really.
years.
52. So, yeah, I mean, in
That's
today's times, that he could have lived at least 25, 30 years more.
Absolutely,
at least,
absolutely.
maybe more. So, he would have been probably even living today if
That's
he was
right.
so
That's
unfortunately passed away. But what is interesting is that his vision was actually translated into reality by his successor.
That's right.
So, whom do you identify as some of the great people who followed him, who made it happen?
Yeah. This is again a very interesting question, Suresh. First of all, I should say that the outlook of Sarabhai himself, I only said what he did. He was a man of an extraordinary courage of conviction. His decision making, he was also an industrialist. He comes from a very well known industrial family of Ahmedabad.
And one of the oldest and the
oldest
best
family, where Ambalal Sarabhai, his father, and so on. So he had that thing running in his blood, a way of looking at things where big decisions can be taken and a lot of money can be put. And he translated that kind of a thing. So people who were working with him at that time in the space, they had no problem of taking decisions which lends into several lakhs and so on. A time when even 1,000 rupees was very cautiously decided. He had already put these people in the thinking process like that. He had also the ability to see problems of an organization and he knew how to deal with it. For example, he knew here is an area where I would like, it's a complex technology. I can't only totally depend on one guy or a one team. So he used to have deliberate duplication of this. So that's
here that also the
management style, he brought in the corporate management style in some form into the India's space.
Doctor, we'll continue talking about Vikram Sarabhai, ISRO and all the issues. We'll take a short break and we'll just continue the discussion.
Okay.
This is Dr. Kasturirangan. We are talking to him about issues related to ISRO and our own moon mission. And we'll just continue talking to him. Don't go away, come back soon. Welcome back. This is Suresh Prabhu talking to you and talking to Dr. Kasturirangan about his vision about space and technologies related to that. Doctor, you are talking about the first founder chairman of ISRO,
that's right.
Vikram Sarabhai, and I could see a different type of facial expression. I mean, does it touch your heart when you talk about him?
Yes. He was looking after and he founded the Physical Research Laboratory, which in a sense is the cradle of India's space program. Everything got conceptualized there. And I joined there as a student way back in 1963-64. And PRL was in a takeoff stage now because it was also trying to handle the space program's original concepts and also the first steps that we were taking in the space. And I had this very unique privilege of knowing him at that point when I was just a student.
And he was already a hero.
He was already a hero and he was so well known nationally, internationally. And so what can I say about such a person, a visionary institution builder, a millionaire with a lot of corporate things with him, and also a visiting professor at MIT, a PhD from Cambridge, a cosmic ray research worker, everything that one can think of between science, technology, management
and very handsome person.
And an extraordinarily handsome person who I think, and who ultimately married, of course, Mrinalini Sarabhai, a well-known danseuse. But so the important thing is that I was thrilled that I am going to be seeing him periodically. He is not there all the time at PRL. PRL is Physical Research Laboratory. And one of the early experiences of me, which is still very much in my mind and which really brings out his own outlook about youngsters and how to rear them into future leaders and motivate them, is something very much. I will just share this with you. This was, we were just building, myself and two of my colleague students. We were building a small instrument to fly into that upper atmosphere to look at the radiations that come from outside the earth. You call it as cosmic radiation. And these radiation, of course, we have no clue where it is coming from, how it is produced and so on. But nevertheless, they do create a number of secondary effects in the atmosphere which we wanted to measure. So we built an instrument, a Jaeger-Muller counter, as you say. These are radiation detectors, instruments for shaping it, producing the necessary pulse processing circuitry for electronics, and then ultimately you transmit it with a small transmitter which is also built into it, tag it onto a balloon, inflate it and fly it into upper atmosphere. It will go up to 30-40 kilometers and it starts returning the data from there by transmitting the information. It's a very unique experiment because the first time that we were trying to use a transmitting system using balloon. And we were ready on the appointed day, and then we went into a small field behind the Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad to fly this. We had to do it early in the morning because you have these winds which will make it difficult to hold the balloon if it is inflated later in the day. So we started the work at 4 o'clock early morning. By 5 o'clock we were all set to go, and there appears Sarabhai. And in the meanwhile, we were finally plugging in the transmitter to make sure that we get the signals properly, and I find suddenly that there is some interference. And this interference was internally generated, and I can tell you that is a kind of a thing that one would detest to have in the last minute in any experiment. And that's what happened ultimately. We started struggling, myself and two of my colleagues, to see whether we can overcome this problem, doing filtering and so on. We were not in a position, and we see that the boss was looking at us all the time. He had come at 4:30, 5 o'clock just to inspire us and encourage us. And then he saw our dilemma. So, Suresh, I think this is not an area which you should just try to solve it in the field. You have to take it back to the laboratory. I think you are going to have a very challenging day today looking at this problem. I can also tell you it's going to be very interesting because by evening you would have learned 10 times more than if you had flown the balloon succeeding with putting this payload. Because there is a problem there, you are going to get into the nitty-gritty detail, you are going to solve it, and in the whole process of solving it, you are going to learn, and you will be much more knowledgeable than ever you would have been if you had successfully flown it today morning. And he said, therefore, I suggest you go. I will come back next week. I am not here tomorrow. I am sure you are going to have a good flight, and I will ask you how things went. And I am sure it is going to be a success. We were greatly relieved. We went back, we solved the problem. Next day, we flew it successfully. We got 4 hours of data, everything happened. And that Sunday, he normally comes on Saturday, Sunday to Physical Research Laboratory, Sunday morning. And if you want to catch him, best thing is to stand near the staircase when he comes up and just say, hello, sir. And then he will remember everything. And he said, how did the experiment go? I told him it went off well. Where did it go? I said that it went towards Virangam. And he asked, did you get the payload back? No, sir, I think it has gone into the sea. Oh, it's fine, but when are you going to give me a party? You know, this you can just imagine.
Doctor, this is something you are trying to talk about. What makes ISRO click? You think something, the spirit of ISRO, is it something?
This is embedded. Yes, this episode tells you how he encouraged us, inspired us, and made us look at problems not as a liability but as an asset, and how you look at the problem to be a stepping stone to success.
Doctor, normally in India, we have this attitude which has become now national characteristic, in which we take things very easy. If whatever happens, we say it's hone wala hi hai. And then we say there is something wrong, we say, oh, chalta hai, no problem. But in case of your type of organization, even 0.0001% of error is not tolerable. For a simple reason is that you can't send a mission to moon if all this chalta hai would have been possible. Now you just trying to explain earlier that all this is done by an Indian effort, Indian scientists, Indian mind, Indian brain, Indian people. The same Indians,
that's right,
in some walks of life would be willing to do chalta hai. Lekin yahan chalta nahi, you are to running, not chalta hai. You are all running towards moon. How you can talk about an organization which is totally away from all these national characteristics of chalta hai?
I think that's what I want to say. It is not that, first of all, of course, the type of demands that are placed when you get into a program like space makes you do things to the level of last iota of perfection that you need to bring in your professionalism. That you can't escape it. As you rightly said, you slip up at some place, you had it seen all across the world that India has goofed it up. So you have this pressure on you that you are doing it in front of the world, you are doing it in front of your country, and you are yourself fired by a passion to make it succeed. When these are all ingrained in you as a way to do your work, obviously you cannot escape the responsibility of doing it the best way. that you can. So, you bring in the best of you in you, and every Indian in him has got something which is very unique and the very best. I mean, I compare it with the rest of the world. We are no less capable than anybody else.
So, doctor, actually it is there somewhere within us.
That's right.
But we are not able to bring it out.
Because either the environment.
The organization? Is
no,
it because
yeah, you are right. Sometimes it is inbuilt, but it also depends on the environment.
Yeah,
the
that's
people,
the organization.
Yeah, that is the organization. The organization should put a demand. The culture should be all pervasive. It cannot be on one person or two person. And the leader has the responsibility to not only make sure that that culture is diffused into the individuals in the system, but also he will be a source of inspiration for himself practicing it. And how does he practice? He comes at 4:30 to look at a couple of students whose future we don't know what it is going, but he comes and we go around telling, oh, Sarabhai came today morning to see what we are doing, and then it spreads. So everybody would like to see, now Sarabhai, I also want to show something. So it spreads like
so
almost.
That's also leadership. Huh?
That is.
But
leadership.
doctor, he passed away very young age.
Yeah,
but organization still survived, thrived. Who are the successors who really made it happen?
Yeah. So if you look at what Sarabhai left, he left with a vision. He showed that space is useful to us. He inspired all of us in a generation. And then he said, now I leave it to you. And he left this world at the age of 52. One fine morning, he was no more. I think December 30 or 31st.
Just
this month, just in next few days. That was the day he left this world. I think in a very rather a shocking way, because he went to sleep all healthy.
Year was the end of his life.
That was the end of the life, and next day morning he didn't get up. And then came the question of succession, and there were a lot of contenders. But Madam Gandhi was at that time the Prime Minister, and she knew how to choose people. So she, of all the people, she looked at all across the spectrum and finally decided that she will go for Satish Dhawan, who was at that time the director of the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore.
Oh really? He was not in ISRO?
No, he was not in ISRO. He had a PhD in aeronautics from California Institute of Technology. He worked under Professor von Lippmann. And von Lippmann is a student of Theodor von Karman, the father of astronautics in US. And so he was a grand student of von Karman. And she picked him up. And Professor Dhawan had a very interesting track record academically. He was a BSc in physics, an MA in literature, English literature, then an MS in aerodynamics, then a PhD in aeronautics. And so that was his track record. And so he was not only exceptional in engineering and science, but he was also exceptional in English. Even commas, he used to be very careful when you draft a letter. That is the level of perfection.
So that was a perfectionist in language and
he was a
perfection.
That is the central point. You said that. He was so perfectionist in what he did that everything he wants to be thought about first before you do anything. So he will say, you think about it, you assess it, you quantify it, and you give me the alternate routes. Then only an action is clear to him. So I worked with him as a second level. I didn't work with him initially directly with him, because there was second level management. I was in the third level management. But I still had a lot of access. The one advantage of ISRO culture is the top man is always accessible even to the lower people. There is no difficulty. There is nothing like.
That's another secret of ISRO.
Another secret, because everywhere, especially on the technical side and scientific side, I think the chairman can pick up the telephone and ask any working engineer what is happening to that area. You said there is some problem. Can you tell me what is the status of it and where you are? That fellow feels so excited, because directly you get the call from chairman. This is something as a culture we have followed all through in the successive chairman, and in the all through the years that it has been in existence. So he used to be a very taskmaster, because he is also an academic of a par excellence, and his interest has been all through in academic area. So he never could take an answer as the only answer for a particular problem. He will ask you hundreds of other questions. So actually, whenever I used to go and discuss, it was a terror for me to go and sit with him for even half an hour, because the number of questions he would have asked, the number of clarification he would have sought, and the number of analysis and assessment he expects you to do subsequently. I think for half an hour you will have at least 10 days of work to be done. So that is the kind of perfectionist he was. But then I can tell you one thing, when we had to build this India's first remote sensing satellite IRS, and we had to agree with the Russians who were supposed to launch it for us, we had to define an orbit for it. And I said, sir, we have already optimized the orbit, and it is to 904 kilometer above the earth, and it will be a polar inclination, 99 degrees inclination. He said, are you sure that there are no other orbits which are also acceptable to you, and you will agree to change it after 2 years? I was committing to him something 7 years ahead of the launch. I said, sir, so this is the best of the ability of the youngsters who have worked on this area, who have done detailed calculations about the orbit and the celestial mechanics, and they have come up to this.